Theros Beyond Death brought us many playable cards for Commander. We got a new line of demigods, and we got a new cycle of some returning gods, and we got some multicolor cards that are much more playable than some of the monocolor cards that we got.
Yep, we've got a bunch of very medium cards to talk about today and a couple standouts. The video starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. It is time to tier rank all of the possible commanders in Theros Beyond Death. But first, if you like the video by the end of it and you want to see more like it, hit that like button and that subscribe button.
It's the best way to support the channel as we continue to grow. We have a bunch of cards to talk about today. As Joel mentioned, we are going to review and rank every single potential possible commander from Theros Beyond Death.
Let's get over into the cards. So we'll start here with Daxos Blessed by the Sun. Daxos represents this uncommon legendary cycle of cards that we got in this
the demigods.
The demigods, yeah. And we're going to kind of go quickly through them because they just didn't end up being impactful enough for Commander, kind of spoiler alert. But we want to get down into when the gold cards hit because there's a lot of good stuff down there. Daxos Blessed by the Sun, Jake. Two white for a 2-star, and the toughness is equal to your devotion to white, so it comes out as a 2/2 and grows. And then whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain a life. So I see a kind of Soul Warden, Soul Sisters style build. You could, go white weenie and you're gaining life, growing your Johnny's Pride mates and the like, things like that, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I think that that's the best way to approach this. I do think that the general is subpar. For 2 mana, I would rather be playing SRAM, a card that I'm increasingly impressed with over time. It represents a draw engine. A lot of the time with white, you have to figure out a way, how do I draw cards consistently? And so it's kind of contingent on what artifacts you include in the deck. SRAM is really good with equipment. You play SRAM for cheap, you cast equipment, you profit from the cards drawn. I think there's a reason that a lot of people prefer that velocity over something like this. This is just very middle ground to me, and I would rank it at like a D or a C. I'll defer to your judgment.
I would agree. I would agree that that a D sounds good for this one. It does not do enough, honestly, when it comes into the battlefield. Or while it's on there. I will say it's a little bit better than some of the other demigods, but
sure.
It's just not what you want. Here's a mono white commander that actually has some value. 1 white, 2 other for Heliod Suncrown is a 5/5 indestructible. Devotion is less than 5. It isn't a creature, but whenever you gain life, regardless, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature enchantment you control, and you can give something lifelink for a white and 1 other.
Yeah, so one thing right off the bat with this card is it has the Walking Ballista infinite combo that builds into the deck nicely. Right. So if you're looking for, a pretty humble general, honestly, in my opinion, but does have a way of tutoring up, an artifact, you get Walking Ballista on the field, it has an infinite combo in the deck, that's definitely worth considering. So this is at minimum going to be a B from me. I do like that it has the +1/+1 counter and the lifelink built into it as well. You don't have to have extra cards to turn on that synergy. And so for that reason, yeah, I would rank it at like A-, B+.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with you on a B.
Very cheap. Yeah, I like how cheap it is.
Exactly. It hits the battlefield on turn 3, regardless. That's always going to happen. I do think that it is a playable commander in white, but is mono white a playable command style? Oh, hello. Flip that one around on you, know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think it's great in the 99. Let's talk about Terranika, a Crowan veteran, 2 white, 1 other legendary creature, human soldier, vigilance. When Terranika attacks, untap another target creature you control until end of turn. That creature has base power and toughness 4/4 and gains indestructible. It's a 3/3. Again, very, very medium. It's a 3/3 for 3 with vigilance. when it attacks, you have to attack with this.
Right.
So if the opponent is good, if they have something bigger, they're just going to kill it.
Yeah, and move on.
I see it. Yeah, I see it on the board as just kind of like a minor inconvenience. It's very contingent on what you have on the board as well. So it looks like a build around constructed card that we're trying to evaluate for Commander.
Exactly.
And
yeah, for Commander, I'm kind of on D or E for this one. I hate that you have to attack to get any value out of this. I hate that it doesn't protect itself when it attacks. It just protects whatever is attacking with it. Does E sound good?
Like
to
if
you?
you could, I would put it at E as for if I ever decide to play it.
E for
I must be E for ever.
E for effort of being
E for
being
effort.
a Magic
I like
the
that.
Gathering card. Look at Illyrios Enraptured. 3 blue and 2 other for a 2/3. Enters the battlefield tap. Doesn't untap during your untap step if you control a reflection. Enters the battlefield, create a 3/2 blue reflection creature token. So you got a little bit of a narrative built into a card here, and that's cute. But I never, ever, 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 ever want to play a creature that costs 3, brings in 1 body, but 1 body has to stay sidelined while it brings in its other body that is just not special at all. It's just a 3/2. And I'm gonna get yelled at for some specific combo that Illyrios is awesome in. And
I don't think so.
Let's argue in the comments about how this one's definitely an F, how it's almost completely unplayable. And
yeah, I mean, like, let's talk about mono blue. You could be playing something like Urza, and instead you're gonna go for it just doesn't offer anything.
I mean,
there's
Jin
nothing.
Gitaxis?
There's no synergy. There's no build around.
Right.
It's not like Emery. It's not like it
just brings the
there's
body.
a list of cards that are infinitely better than it. Let's talk about Caliphate, Beloved by the Sea, 2 blue, 1 other legendary enchantment creature, demigod. This is another one of the demigods. Power is equal to your devotion to blue. Creatures and enchantments you control have spells your opponents cast that target this permanent, cost 1 more to cast. So a little bit of a built-in stacks theme. She appears to be in command of a ship that she has recently got off of the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, definitely. She's in a rickety ship. The power for me being equal to the devotion to blue is weird to me. It seems like in blue it would make more sense if it was the toughness, but also maybe, blue creatures, they're not very tough. Maybe they get tricky with the mind games and they can hit you for a lot. At least this one's got, it's got that stacks thing down there. So it has a strategy that you can sort of lean on to build into Rhystic Study, I mean, you can't put
propaganda.
You can't put cards like Ghostly Prison in here, so you can't pillow forward up real hard. But you can do
Invoke Prejudice.
Yeah, you can
very
do some stacksy
expensive
stuff.
card.
Get some artifacts. Get your things going. Winter Orb. Make sure that your power, huge toughness 3 blue creature can swing with not many options for blockers. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It's a fine card, but again, I probably wouldn't build it as a commander. I would rank this at like a D as well.
I actually was just glancing over there.
E plus, D minus.
I was glancing over here and seeing about where I thought it would land, and honestly, to me, it seems about as good as Daxos there. So I do like it at D, if that is fine with you. How about Thassa Deep Dwelling?
Yeah, this is interesting, and I don't know if you noticed this. Maybe you were watching, but these were both Zach Stella, and he used a similar color palette for both of the previous cards. Yep. Caliphate and Thassa are both the same artist.
There you go.
Really interesting, though. I just noticed that in that moment. I was like, wow, a lot of these colors are similar. And then I was like, oh, yeah, they are working together.
Godhood on Theros has a color palette, Jake. And if you go in on a color and you are a god or demigod, you're going to have some light pinks, some coral color, and some whites and some blues. That's what you're going to have to dress in from now on.
Yeah, I guess so. So for 1 blue, 3 other, indestructible, as long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa isn't a creature. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to one other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. It has a built-in tap. 1 blue, 3 other. So, something that immediately comes to mind for me with this card are really fun, like treason effects where you steal something away and then flicker it to keep it. However, a lot of those effects are in red. So even though this card is excellent and I would love it in my 99, I don't so much love it as my general. However, you can flicker fun stuff like Snapcaster Mage and other effects like that and abuse some ETBs with this card. Yeah. You mentioned Agent of Treachery earlier. I think that it's pretty good. The casting cost is pretty low. Blue is notorious for running a ton of mana rocks, so I feel like getting this out would be not super difficult.
I think it's a playable commander if you want to play a mono blue commander and you want to play Deep Dwelling Thassa. I like that mana sink tricky thing of tapping creatures. You know, as your opponents go to their attack step, you can tap down the things that you don't want them to attack with. Also, if you do build some kind of stacks thing, only giving them the option to untap certain stuff and then tapping that stuff down. If it's a creature, that can be very tricky. And then, the obvious way to build the commander for full potential is blue creatures and artifact creatures, colorless creatures that have great ETBs. And so, things like Meteor Golem and Agent of Treachery and things like that you can steal stuff or destroy stuff and really get some good ETBs going. Do you think Thassa rises above the sea and gets up to be with Heliod, or do you think Thassa dwells in the sea?
Having that built-in tap is really nice, and the fact that you can abuse ETBs with this card, I would put it at a solid B.
Yeah, I think that B is fair for Thassa Deep Dwelling. Thrix the Sudden Storm is a flashy blue creature. Blue 3 other for a 4/5 flash flying. Spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater, cost 1 less to cast, and cannot be countered. So, you gotta play some kind of lots of CMC 5 or greater. It is spells you cast with CMC 5 or greater, so you can play Omniscience, you can play, Mind's Dilation and some huge spells in blue without any fear of them getting countered. You can play...
I do like the can't be countered. Right. Can't be countered is nice.
1 less is fine. It's a little bit of ramp, like Jake said.
If it said blue, 2, I would be really into it.
2 less to cast? Oh yeah, that would be ridiculous. Absolutely. But I think that it's fine. I think that it has some playability. I think I really do like the flash. You could play like a tribal flying deck with it and just be flying over the whole time. It doesn't excite me terribly, but for a mono blue commander that's probably very budget, I think it could be a fun build around.
Yeah, I think it's very budget. The flash is neat.
Yeah.
The flash is kind of like a EOT, flash it in and then try to cheat something in for cheaper than normal. Because again, of all the mana rocks that are running EDH, and blue really does like artifacts. It helps blue ramp and get moving quickly. I would rank it at like a C.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. It's not super great, and there are better options, but it's not absolutely unplayable.
Right.
And
that's where I'm at. I think that C is very fair. I think it's just a solid option for your mono blue commander. Pretty much when we make these lists, anything that's C or higher, I think, is going to have some potential, some playability. If you want to build the deck, I don't think it's going to sink you, and I don't think it's going to put you at an automatic disadvantage just because of how bad your commander is.
Sure. But let's talk about a commander that does kind of put you at a disadvantage as far as how bad it is. Ephemia, the Cacophony, 1 black, 1 other flying. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile an enchantment card from your graveyard. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. It is a 2/1, so very, very, very lackluster power and toughness for what it does. It's just a flying 2/1 for 2. And then it kind of pigeonholes you into having to build a black enchantment removal.
Mono black enchantment. And look, we know how to build this. You don't have to tell us how to build this. Get dead weight, cards like that are enchantments and are removal. You get double value off of them because they're killing stuff, and then you're bringing 2/2s. But think about what we're talking about here. It's just not impactful enough. You're talking about playing cards that are like -2/-2 to a creature, or sacrifice target. Its controller sacrifices this creature at the end step. I know that cards like that exist. And then you're creating 2/2s to supplement your flying 2/1. I mean, it's just
right. And enchantments really thrive in white. So if it were black-white and we were able to get a little bit of variation in enchantments going on, I think that could be better.
Yeah, it's got a lot.
But as for what it is,
it.
it's again, this is another card that we're evaluating that is a card built for 60-card constructed format. This card thrives in Pioneer. It's excellent in the SRAM Auras deck, but in EDH, it's just not good.
I even had a Brawl
general
deck with it that was pretty good.
I don't even think it's good in EDH in the 99.
No, I mean, again, well, if you have a black-green Enchantress deck, I think it could be good in that. Token creators, put it with some sacrifices. Are you thinking E? Are you thinking F?
I would never, ever in a million years play it as my commander, and for that reason, I would give it an F. From a commander standpoint. Right. If you think that Ephemia is good in Commander, let us know. Send us your deck. We will look at it.
You can change our minds, but we can't change our minds. Erebos Bleak-Hearted is an indestructible 5/6 for 4 that if another creature you control dies, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card, pay 2, sack a creature, target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. So
yeah, like we were just talking about Ephemia. Look at all of the text on this card for 2 mana more, and it's indestructible. It sits there. It's pretty much like a do-it-all toolbox.
Yeah, it's all inclusive as far as what it does. You can sacrifice a creature to give a creature -1 toughness, which is the relevant part of that. The -2 is fine. And then whenever another creature, so that's a creature dying, so you can then pay 2 life and draw a card. So you get to do a lot for that 2 mana. But you do need to be sacrificing creatures. I think that this comes up from an E or a D for me, simply because it says sacrifice another creature and not a non-token creature. So if you can get some kind of, ooze spawn, some kind of Thrall creation deck going where you've got a lot of 0/1, maybe Eldrazi spawn kind of things, a lot of things to sacrifice so that you can really machine gun down something with 6 toughness or higher.
Sure, and if something has indestructible, this is a card that has a nice built-in way of dealing with indestructible if you have enough mana to sink into it. I actually really like it. I would rank it again at around a B.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as bad as a C. I love the converted. I love
I think it is a C,
it does.
But then it says sacrifice another creature and not a non-token creature. And that does bring it up to a B. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but that can be a huge turner if you can figure out a way to get lots of black tokens going. Right, yeah, then you can just machine gun stuff down.
Let's talk about another demigod, 2 black for Timerit, chosen from death. Timerit's toughness is equal to your devotion to black. 1 black, 1 other. Exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards. You gain 1 life for each creature card exiled this way. 2 and a star. So toughness is what's going to be manipulated by the devotion. Again, this is a card that is a build around for a 60 card constructed. This is an excellent,
it's like
relevant
a sideboard card for a 60 card constructed.
I
mean, it could go in your
sideboard
99,
card. That's what I meant.
Especially if it's like a Theros, demigods, gods kind of theme. It's a great card for your 99 because it's always nice to have that versatility to try and hose a graveyard deck, because graveyard decks, if they can be hosed very easily, but if they don't get hosed, they can pop off real quick. And so Timerit is a card that will help you deal away with that strategy, and so it's good to have that in your toolbox 99. However,
this is a block relevant way of getting rid of stuff like Kroxa and Uro, which came out of this set. Just saying.
Cat. It's not very
Cat.
It's not very impactful. It's like the rest of these demigods. It's very specific. I would rate it a D, because I would say don't make it a commander, but maybe put it in your 99, and so it's got some commander playability. Maybe that's kind of where the D and the
Yeah,
E
like-
slot fall.
One thing I would say about this card is that graveyard decks are important in Commander.
Right.
Graveyard decks, like, people use their graveyard as their second hand. So there is a little bit of merit to it. So I would maybe bring it up to, what were you saying, a D?
I would say a D because I would never play it as my
Yeah.
commander, and that's where I kind of want to reserve C plus for. But I could see it in the 99, and so it's not completely commander useless like Ephemia or the token creator down there.
Yeah.
I don't
the
even-
whatever that card
I don't
is
even
that we
need to-
forgot the
I
name
don't
of.
need to know its name. I don't need to know its name. Anax Hardened in the Forge is another demigod. Let's go over it. Absolute House in standard red. 2 red, 1 other for a star 3. Its power, the star is equal to your devotion to red, so it comes out as a 2/3. Whenever it or another creature non-token creature dies, create a 1/1 Satyr token with this creature can't block. If the power was 4 or greater on that creature, you create 2 instead. And so, again, I feel like this lives well in the 99. I feel like this is not where you want to live. I mean, mono red's already going to be a tough call. And so you really need to have something strong to build around that contributes
strong at the
directly
helm.
to your strategy, right? And your strategy, I promise, cannot be 1/1 red Satyr creature tokens with this creature can't block.
Just to be honest, based on the art, like, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that I would be able to beat up Annex.
Oh, in a fight?
Like,
No.
Oh, like, I'm dead, dude.
Well, I mean, he's already got 3
However-
toughness. That's stronger than a bear, Jake. Annex is stronger than a bear. You couldn't fight a bear.
Yeah. I do like that the power is what's manipulated here.
Right.
If you build Annex in a build with, like, a lot of, enchantments and ways to fuel that devotion,
Yeah.
you get anger in the yard, and now you're swinging with it whenever it gets removed. I do wish that it said, when it dies, put a number of satyrs equal to its power, but now we're talking about mythic level.
Right. Not uncommon.
Mythic level card. Yeah, I think the card is fine, but again, and I know that that's like a theme of this video, we're talking about cards that are build-arounds for 60 card constructed. This is a card that has been played to great success on MTG Arena in Standard and in Historic, and it will probably see play in Pioneer as well. However, it's just not good as a general.
I put it down there at D. It's with the rest of these demigods. D for demigods. I think that they just didn't quite.
It's dressed
come
like a
to
soldier,
party.
man, not like a general.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. I think that sums it up perfectly. Perforos is up next.
Yeah, Perforos, bronze-blooded, 1 red, 4 other, legendary enchantment creature, god. Indestructible as long as your devotion to red is less than 5. It isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have haste, so a little bit of a fervor built into this card. And 1 red, 2 other, you may put a red creature card or an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So you're putting something huge on the field, it gains haste, you're swinging with it. I think this is a card that's a lot more attractive to players that are trying to do something big and splashy.
Yeah, for sure. It's got the haste clause built in. It's got the show and tell, sneak and show kind of thing going on there. Red creature card or artifact creature card is a little specific. I wish it just said creature card, because then we could get into like Eldrazi and have access to a lot of uncommons, but it was probably very, very carefully designed so that you couldn't sneak Emrakul onto the battlefield and swing with it. Worst creature I can think of, and let me know in the comments what creature you would sneak onto the battlefield with Perforos, but Blightsteel Colossus, something like that. Trying to infect somebody down out of nowhere. You got to sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. Also, you can use this ability, it's interesting to note, to instant speed block something. So if you've got some red or some artifact creatures that have Death Touch, you could sneak an artifact creature with Death Touch onto the battlefield, kill off something that's attacking you. I'm trying to make it better than it is. I personally... I
like the old Perforos better.
Right, mono red is so
just like
hard to build already. You've got to have... I just feel like you've got to have a commander that blows the top off if you can pull off whatever your combo is with it.
It's so close. It's another color that relies heavily on artifacts and mana rocks to really, really take off.
Right.
And so with this Perforos, you're going to want to, run a lot of stuff that draws cards, and at least I would say probably like 10 effects or 10 to 15 payoffs of what you're going to get to cheat in using Perforos. And then the rest of the deck for me would be like mana rocks and draw spells and stuff just in case Perforos gets removed.
Yeah.
Most likely it won't because it's indestructible or you'll get to bring it back. But it's a little bit lackluster. However, I don't think it's awful, and I do think that it's fun, and there's probably some big splashy plays that you can do with this card. I would rank it at like a B again.
I wouldn't say that it's as good as Heliod Thas or Erebos in this case, though, just because I don't think it's got the build around potential. But if you want to drop it at a B, let's do it.
Well, let's do C+.
Okay, sounds good. You know how much I love doing pluses. I love putting these.
Yeah,
cards
you're so
in
afraid to
between.
put it right in the middle.
I'm not.
What's wrong with it overlapping the Thassa and the Erebos?
I'm not afraid. It just makes the whole thing look wonky from here on out. Where do I put
It
the
doesn't.
next C?
It doesn't
over
bother
here
me.
or
I
over
like
here?
it.
Well, I think that's become very clear throughout this conversation that it doesn't bother you. Repeat it again.
Doesn't bother me.
It does bother me.
It doesn't bother me.
It does bother me. There we go.
Let's talk about this scary spider.
Arasta of the Endless Web is 2 green, 2 other for a 3/5 reacher. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. So in a 4-player pod, this is going to have some payoffs. Lots of people are going to be casting instants and sorceries. However, it doesn't hit the floor until turn 3 maybe would be the earliest, possibly turn 2 if you get some good some Soul Ring action going. You definitely want to ramp it out, and then you're making 1/2 spiders, and you want to play kind of a tribal spider thing. It just seems like a very defensive strategy that could go very well in your 99, but not rock the house as far as being your commander.
Yeah, stuff that comes to mind is stuff like Doubling Season or anything that's gonna double tokens, parallel lives, that kind of thing. I do like that it just passively creates things. You don't have to pay any mana into this ability. It's just going to create them. Yes, it blocks for days. It blocks forever. Maybe you could put some big stuff in here. Maybe it is kind of like a go wide, you run overrun type effects once you've created enough spiders.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the way I would go with this card. Very humble, because when green comes to mind, we think of cards like Omnath, Locus of Mana, or Thrun the Last Troll, big impactful spells that have ways to ramp and then ways to protect themselves. So I think the card is fair. I think it's humble. I think it is far, far, far from unplayable. I also think it's far, far, far from an S.
Yeah, I think that it falls really well at, I would say, C.25, because I think that if you want to build it as a commander, it's not going to let you down. You just need to know that it's not going to win you the game because it's very defensively minded. So I think C. Yeah. I want to say C.35. Do you think we could put it like right there? Or no?
If you bring it in layers to above Thassa, yeah.
I'll just put it as a C and stop being a jerk. Nylea Keen-Eyed is an enchantment creature. God, indestructible 5/6 for 4. Makes your creature spells cost 1 less. Devotion 5 or more turns it on to a creature, and you can pay 3 to reveal the top card. If it's a creature card, put it in your hand. Otherwise, you can put it in your graveyard. That bottom ability is worded the least are worded in the way that I like the least for these abilities, because number 1, you have to reveal it. It's not a may. Number 2, it goes into your graveyard if it's not a creature. So if this was something like, you may reveal it if it's a creature, it goes onto the battlefield and it costs a lot more. And then the other way, it goes into your hand. Or you may reveal it if it's a creature. I don't know. Some other way of wording that you get the card regardless and you don't have to reveal it unless you want this other effect. Not automatically reveal it, get creatures others into your graveyard.
Like, I wish that effect on the bottom were like green, black, one other, because then we could build this into green, black, and we would have something really interesting going on. You could build like a Golgari deck with this, and then you don't really mind if the card goes into your graveyard because you're able to get it back. You're able to recur it. You can turn it into a dredge deck. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I really like that. However, in green, ramp is never really a problem. So if you're going mono green and you're going ramp, you're probably playing like Omnath already. And again, you just talked about it, but the reveal the top card of your library, if it's a creature card, put it into your hand. I mean, that's great. If you have Sensei's Divining Top and you're able to set the deck up so that you can always take advantage of that card advantage and just continually dig, I think that that's a really good way to play with this card. Otherwise, I don't really care so much about the creature spells costing 1 less to cast. I mean, I get that. It's a passive discount on colorless, but it's just, I don't know. I'd rather be playing something else in green.
It does represent some card advantage in green, which is nice. And I liked your point about digging. You can go digging with this and just dig past the stuff, put it into your graveyard, creatures in your hand. You know, if you've got access to 9 mana, which, like you said, is not going to be very difficult in green, we're going to dig down 3 cards, and all the creatures are going to go into your hand, and everything else is going to go into your graveyard.
Yeah.
That's not bad, especially at your opponent's EOT.
And if you have like a Crucible of Worlds or a Ramunap Excavator and ways to play the lands from your yard, then yeah, just like dig down, put lands in your yard because you know you're going to play them back.
Right.
Again, I do think it's very humble, despite the fact that there is some good evidence of velocity in this card. I would put it at like a C, maybe like a C.34.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to put it over here and just like twist it. I think that
sure.
I think that C+. I think C+ is very appropriate for
C+ is good.
For Nylea. Renata Called to the Hunt is next, and I want to point out, same thing you said, that was also Chris Ron art. This is Chris Ron art here. This was a series that they did of the gods and the demigods.
Yeah, very cool.
Yep.
So Renata Called to the Hunt, 2 green, 2 other. Power is equal to your devotion to green. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it. Meh.
I think it's actually fairly strong. Essentially, what you've got is an enchantment that can be killed easier that says all of your creatures enter with +1/+1 counters. That's not terrible. And Renata itself, if you can get that devotion up, it's very easy in these colors to give something trample, and then you're off to the races with some damage.
Yeah, and again, doubling season or anything that's going to double counters is going to be really nice, and it's gonna like this deck.
Right.
But again, green generals.
Yeah. I think it's funny because I don't think it's as good as Nylea, but I do think it's a little better than Arasta, so it's kind of like in between there. So for me, it falls right out of C.
Yeah, I think a C is fine. It's not unplayable.
Right.
It's great in the 99 in certain situations.
Yeah, but if you want to build a commander deck around Renata, I think that you could find some success with the right choices of 99. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, let's talk about a Dimir card.
Yeah, we've got some gold cards now. So we're past the monocolor commanders that came from the set, and we're into the gold ones, and we've actually got some conversations to have.
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about Atris.
Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths, is Dimir +2 for a menacing 3/2 that has a little factor fiction built in, enters the battlefield.
Baby
Target
factor
opponent
fiction.
looks at the top 3 and separates them into a face-down pile, face-up pile, and you get to put 1 pile into your hand. So a lot of times this is show you the 2 not as good cards from it and hide the good card and try and make you guess, or you could like hide a land if you really want to get tricky and try and trick the other person. But really, if I see 2 playables and a single card by itself, probably take the 2 playables, and then it's more of a discussion if you've got a playable and a land and then something else, unless you need lands. It represents a guaranteed card advantage right out of the command zone.
I like the face down stuff. I really do. Yeah. And blue has a lot of really good blink effects as well. So if you can blink Atris over and over again, you can really get some serious card advantage going.
And look, you're not starving for draw spells in blue and black, I promise. But having one guaranteed out of the command zone, that's not terrible.
Yeah, blue-black are strong colors. I think that blue-black is nice. It's one of my favorite color combinations to play. The thing about this card is I like the politics of it. I like that it's fun.
Right.
How, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into a face down pile and a face up pile. I love that one is face down. There's a little bit of a bluffing that goes with it, a little bit of politics. I think it's a fun card. And when we're playing EDH, I like to focus on fun.
Right.
I think fun is the entire point of EDH. I think this is better than our entire C category. I would actually rank it at a B. However, I don't really see the potential for an A with it.
No, I think you're right. I think it's not even anywhere close to approaching an A, but I do think it is firmly above our C's that we have here. Speaking of C's, how about a Merfolk next? We've got Dalekos, Crafter of Wonders.
Yes, Dalekos, Crafter of Wonders, 1 red, 1 blue, 1 other. Tap to add 2 wastes, aka 2 colorless mana. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. So pretty cool for equipped stuff. Equipped creatures you control have flying and haste. That 4 toughness is pretty notable as well. The fact that this card gets out of range of a lot of removal.
Yeah, $3 creature spells don't really care here. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You play some big stuff, you throw a 1-cost equipment on it, it's got flying and haste all of a sudden. Dalekos itself is a little soul ring that's got specificity. I really like Dalekos. Of the commanders that we've seen so far, and we'll see some more powerful ones, but of the commanders we've seen so far, I think that this one definitely has the clearest strategy of build around. But that does mean for this one that the build around of this deck is very specific. You're going to be playing equipment. You need to be. To really take advantage of Dalekos, you've got to have equipment in the deck, and you got to have artifacts and artifacts with activated abilities so that you can really take advantage of the soul ring that he's got built
like
in.
you can play like big artifact stuff, which is nice. Maybe artifacts that you normally wouldn't play.
Yeah.
This gets to Memnarch very quickly if you're playing like mana rocks, and then also you cast Dalekos, you can get to Memnarch very fast. Right. I think that the card is good, and I like the converted on it. It's a cheap converted mana cost. It's easy to get into. Red blue is known for drawing just an epic crap ton of cards. So I think, it's a very strong card. I like Nin the Pain Artist, just because Nin the Pain Artist can deal damage and draw a bunch of cards.
Sure.
But I think the card is, I think it's pretty good. I would rank it. What would you rank it at?
I think it's better than our B category. Look at the Bs across the board, and I think it's better than every single one of them. I would actually, this one starts to approach an A for me, maybe a B+.
Yeah, I would say B+. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm also down with an A. If you think that it's an A.
Look at this weird nose you've got going on the elephant of our rankings because you make me do these halvesies. Look at Eutropia, the twice favored.
All right, so why don't you tell us about this card? This is a card that I'm pretty low on,
Simic
but you and I had a conversation
for
about
a
it.
2/2 that says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and that creature gains flying until end of turn. So you're playing an Enchantress deck most likely without the color white, which is kind of a bummer. You've got a flying sub-theme, you've got a counter sub-theme, so you can double counters that are going on to creatures. You can
hardened scales.
Yeah, you can proliferate with this deck pretty easily in these two colors, blue and green. Both love to proliferate. Jake, what do you think of Eutropia?
Well, it's a pretty cheap commander. The more I think about it, with like hardened scales, doubling season, that kind of stuff, anything that's going to double counters. We talked about that one card that I forget the name of it. It's like increasing savagery. No, that's all the way from Dark Ascension. I'm thinking of the card that recently came out. 1 green, 2 other. At the beginning of your turn, doubled the number of counters on this.
It's an enchantment aura called Hydra's Growth.
Yeah, Hydra's Growth. So like that kind of thing. I think that because of how cheap it is, maybe it's like C or D territory. It's just, we've reviewed cards like Kinnan.
Yeah.
We've talked about cards like Uro. So if you're in Simic, Edric, when you're in Simic, you have to think, is this the way that I'm going to get the most potential out of the deck?
Well, and if you don't even
this is a card that you find like particularly like you have an affinity toward it and you want to build a Eutropia, the twice favored, like that's your general, then go for it. But otherwise, I think there's better generals.
Yeah, it's not unplayable, completely unplayable. If you don't want to lean into what the normal Simic thing is to do, I think that, this one's got some fringe playability, kind of a Aura's Enchantress, +1/+1, counter spells that counter target or counter spells that block stuff from hitting your stuff, so you can stay with some cheap ones that, you know, counter spells that target your permanents and stuff like this. Give your stuff hexproof at instant speed. Starlit Mantle would be a card that comes to mind. It enchants and gives hexproof until in EOT kind of thing. But yeah, I think that for me it's just under the line of get out there and play it, because I look at C as like, sure, if you want to build that, you know, do it to it. I think it's just under that line. You know, I'm comfortable giving it a D+ since we live in the world of pluses now. But
we do.
You know, it's I think it's just so barely. You really got to go all in on a strategy that I don't think is going to pay off hard enough in the long run, but could be fun with the right kind of build. We've got a card now that really loves to have fun, and that's Gali of the Endless Dance.
Yeah, so not a lot to talk about with this. This is a cheap Gruel, you know, 1 green, 1 other, haste, other satyrs you could draw, get +1/+1 and have haste. No one cares.
Right.
There aren't a lot of them. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may discard a card at random. If you do, draw 2 cards. That's what we care about, is that sentence, that clause. It draws cards. It's velocity. So if you build this into a lot of haste and a lot of like go wide, go quick, then you're going to get value out of it. But once a couple board wipes have hit, this card is kind of going to be a nothing. It's just going to be late in the game, a 6-cost 2/2 with haste, an 8-cost 2/2 with haste, a 10-cost 2/2 with haste. So a lot of potential to kind of explode out the gate. If you were hypothetically, and we're not talking about 1v1 commander, but in a hypothetical situation, if you were playing this in a 1v1 commander setting instead of a multiplayer commander setting, I think it's going to shine.
Because it's quick and has haste? Yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Commander, you want to go over the top. You want to be in it for the long run. This is a way to guarantee that your early game has explosiveness, like Jake said, but you're going to have to build all of your finishers into the rest of the deck and, you know, hope that you can get to them with the ability.
I would rank it at a C. I don't see it as unplayable, but I like the velocity. But again, Omnath, like...
Sure, and you can
ramp... play lands.
And look, we're not saying that you got to go play the best cards for the colors, you know. That's why we rank these things C's and B's, because we really do think that C's are playable cards, you know. They might require a very specific build around that's maybe not strong, or they might, you know, not really close out the game. I mean, look at our spider over here. It's just completely defensive, and so if you want to build the defensive green deck, go ahead, but yeah, it's not necessarily the best way to go. Haktos the Unscarred. I'm going to talk about a tough card to build. It attacks each combat if able, has to attack, enters the battlefield, choose 2, 3, or 4 at random, has pro every CMC except for the chosen number.
It has protection from them, and it has protection from you.
Right. It's so strange to us that you can't equip Haktos. But
despite the fact that he's holding a giant spear right now.
It is, and a sword, and a cape, and probably some magical boots, but the heel is probably exposed. Haktos.
That's right.
Haktos is too volatile for me to build into a deck. I think that it's a fun card. You can build a very cool, like, Greek tragedy, you know, some kind of very thematic deck with Haktos at the helm. It's in 2 of the hardest colors to build. You can't synergize with it. It's just like, here's my creature. Hopefully you don't have board wipe or the targeted removal that I chose of the CMC.
So let's go ahead and rank this card. This is a Boros card. So Boros is a color that in Commander traditionally has some trouble already. It's just very narrow. It has to attack. It dies to a lot, despite having protection from a lot. I mean, board wipe just eats this card for breakfast.
Yeah, I think that E+ is really where I live with this card. I don't like the Force. I don't like Boros. It has to, you know, it's just so many things that I don't want to have to deal with. Theros introduced Klothys, God of Destiny, to us. 3-cost 4/5 indestructible as long as your devotion is less than 7. It's not a creature. And at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you can exile a target card from a graveyard. Automatically, No payment, it just happens. If it was a land card, you get to mana ramp, and otherwise you get to gain 2 life and deal 2 to each opponent.
Yeah, that each opponent is huge. So if, a lot of time when people play EDH, you're playing a 2v2, like two-headed giant kind of thing going on. Klothys does a lot of damage in that situation, just like Perforos does, like OG Perforos from original Theros. I think that this card is good. It's our closest that we're going to get to an A so far out of the cards that we've reviewed. I think that this might actually be an A.
Yeah.
I love the passive on it. I love the ramp. I love how cheap it is. It's a 4/5 for 3 once it turns on. It's a pretty good card.
Yeah, it's in and of itself, again, it doesn't represent a win-con strategy. It represents this like passive. It's a really good enchantment. This just strikes me as like a dope enchantment because you're going to get to hate out graveyard stuff. Specifically, you get to mana ramp if you can drop this early. You're dealing, it's 2 to each opponent in a 4, and even in a free-for-all. I mean, you're dealing 6 every time you exile a non-land. It's not bad value on a Klothys, on a little Klothys.
Yeah, that's true, and you get to pick apart graveyards like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can comfortably rank it at an A. I would think like B.5, but I think it's a solid. I think A.
B+ is a possibility for this one, but just because this power level, the power level of this set for Commander was a little lower than I think we're used to, especially lately. I think that A is an excellent place for that one to land. Kroxa is up next, and I love this card.
Yeah, this is really cool. 1 red, 1 black. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. And when it enters the battlefield, oh man, this is huge, or attacks, each opponent discards a card. Then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. It escapes for 2 black and 2 red. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard in order to have it escape.
That escape does not get affected by the command tax, so you can pay that 4 to get it out of your graveyard plus 5 cards as many times as you've got cards in your graveyard for.
So a lot of really good ways to fill up the graveyard with this card, with cards like Cathartic Reunion, Damnable Pact, Greed, Erebos, which is one of Joel's generals. There's a lot of ways to draw cards in these colors. And what really matters here is that when it enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card. So this is a very, very cheap commander. It is easy to recur. And what it does to your opponents can be pretty devastating. I
have a deck tech of this on the channel. Go check it out if you want to see specifically how I build my Kroxa EDH deck and play it. There's a ton of brutal synergy with each opponent discarding cards. You can just have somebody completely emptied out and in top deck mode by like turn 5 or 6, and that's brutal in EDH because they have to start spending their time rebuilding their hand while you're developing a board. Kroxa is just a house, in my opinion. It's an S, but I'm also biased because I play it and I love this deck and I've won brutally with it. So do you think it falls S or do you think it falls A? I think it's better than Klothys.
I would put it at an A. I think it would be like maybe like an A+. It's a card that I think is really, really, really strong. And just keep in mind, even though that escape, it says that you have to get rid of 5 other cards.
Right.
Just because you play it and sacrifice it doesn't mean that you can't move it to the command zone, get some higher commander tax on it, and use that effect over and over again and get around that escape cost. If you don't have the cards in the yard, just move it to the command zone, play out all your mana rocks, play it over and over and over again, and just keep sacrificing it to repeatedly do that brutal ability to your opponents. I think the card is really good, and I'm comfortable having it at an A+. Let's talk about Kuneros, Hound of Athreos, 1 black, 1 white. 1 other, Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Creature cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast spells from graveyards. 3/3. It is absolutely a sideboard card.
Yeah, it essentially in Commander, yes, you may get some residual value from creature cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield and players can't cast spells from graveyards. There are going to be some decks that you hose. However, you can't specifically target the stuff out of them. You've got to hope that their strategy is specifically, I want creature cards in my graveyard to enter the battlefield. I want to cast spells from my graveyard. I mean, a lot for me, this is going to come down to, this is a really solid 3/3 creature. It's a 3/3 for 3 with
but
3
it's not
keywords,
a general.
but it's not a general. I think it could work.
It's no Teysa.
It could work really well in your
Loris.
99 because you, like I said earlier, with the black demigod down here. I think that, having it in your toolbox to host some graveyard stuff, absolutely. I mean, one of your favorite Centaur commanders plays creatures out of the graveyard, and you would have to destroy this guy before you were even able to continue your strategy.
And that's the problem with this card, is that I run a lot of spot removal. I'm just not worried about this card at all. It doesn't have, if it said indestructible on it, oh my god, 100%.
Yeah.
Sure, I think it's great. But it's squishy, it's easy to kill, it gets outclassed by a ton, just an epic crap ton of creatures in the format. It's just not strong enough.
Right. It's easier to run like Leyline of the Void or Grafdigger's Cage or something that's got at least a little more, has to be just, it just
it's
creatures,
like, is it as
creatures die to everything, man. I would actually put it
I
down
like
in
it there
E.
I
would drop it.
It's not as bad as Ephemia or whatever that blue card is.
No, it's a fine card as part of your 99. I don't think it's got commander playability, but it shouldn't be your commander. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and as far as the 99, I disagree with you a little bit. I'm most likely going to be running like a Tormod's Crypt or Bajuka Bog. It's just not there.
Right. We got Polykranos up next, our new version of Polykranos from Theros. Beyond Death Unchained. Gruel. Not Gruel. Sorry, Golgari. +2. 0/0. Enters the battlefield with 6 counters. It escapes with 12 counters. If damage would be dealt to it, prevent it. Remove those counters. If you want to escape it for 6, exile 6 other cards. You get a 12/12 that pays 3 to fight another target creature. And this is the big thing right here. This is one of those creatures that I think it is a really fun general in its colors. It's going to have great support. 2 of the best colors that you can choose to run in EDH. It's going to be a huge, beady zombie Hydra, because you're going to be able to fill up your graveyard with these colors so easily. And that coming into the battlefield and just fighting everything down to just die and come back again, I think it's great. I think it's a really fun card. It's not an S or an A, but I think that it's very, very playable.
Yeah, I 100% think it's playable. You're getting extra bang for your buck. You're getting, 6 power and toughness for 4 mana. If it escapes, you're getting extra. There are a ton of ways to double the counters on this.
Oh, yeah.
The idea in black-green, you get just a ton of mana, eat everything that's important. All you're doing is removing 1 counter prevent that damage and remove that many counters from that damage.
Right.
I just think there's a lot of different ways to keep the counters on this multiplying so that you can kill anything that's important and then just swing away to victory. I think the card is fine. There's other cards that I would probably play first in green-black, but I think the card is good.
Yeah, I think that I would actually fall B on this because I think it's better than a C. I think it's a very playable card, and if you want your commander to be Polykranos Unchained, that's definitely something that you can do without too much fear of it being a bad choice.
Sure. Let's talk about Siona, Captain of the Pyles.
We've got white-green, one other for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 7. You can put an aura from among them into your hand. And whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, you create a 1/1 and go wide. In green-white, these are the colors you want to be in if you want to play an Enchantress deck. I've played this deck. It's very strong, but the thing is that sometimes you don't even have to play Siona because an Enchantress deck that gets its pieces can already be hugely strong. You want to get one of your Enchantresses out on the battlefield that's, drawing you a card every time you play an enchantment. You want to get whatever is your main creature at the time, and that's kind of where you want to stop developing your board because you want your auras to go on that one creature. You want to save your other creatures that are going to get put auras on for later after the board wipe happens. You don't want to play out your second Enchantress. So this, to me, is a creature that you play once, maybe twice across the course of a game. It becomes that threat for you at certain points, but it's so cheap. 3 costs, then 5 to recast it, and you're going wide if you need to. I wouldn't concentrate so much on the go wide as much as that's a residual cool thing that happens. Plus, it lets you dig down and get your best aura of the 7 cards on top. But, you know, Enchantress decks are strong, and this is a strong leader for those.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the card is still pretty humble, despite being a really good way to dig deep quickly. I would rank it at probably a B+.
Yeah, I think that B+ is a doable thing. We are running out of space on our line because all of us want to rate them B+ tonight. Luckily, yeah, see, look, it's fine, Joel. It's fine. It'll be fine. It just makes your list look super weird and not nice at all. There's no feng shui to this list. Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, is up next, and thank God for a good one.
Yeah, this is a good card. 1 blue, 1 green, 1 other. When Uro enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. This is the other Titan that came out of Theros Beyond Death, like Kroxa. Whenever Uro enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card. Ooh, velocity, I love it. Life gain, very nice. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and you can escape it for 2 green, 2 blue, exile 5 other cards. So the exact same casting cost, or the exact same cost to escape as Kroxa. I think this card is really, really good. We talked about a different blue-green card tonight. This card absolutely outclasses this. This is teetering on S. I would put it at A+.
I would say that this is an S, because if I wanted to explain to someone who knew about Magic but was learning Commander for the first time what is a good initial line to take when you're building to get used to the format and get some early wins under your belt so that you can kind of learn what's going on, I would say play something that ramps, draws cards, and plays big creatures. And that is all in on this one card, on this one commander, is ramp, life gain, drawing cards, and it's a big creature. You ramp up to Sandworm Convergence, and that's like one of the most humble things that you can ramp up to.
Sure.
But it's ramp up to anything and get ahead of everybody. You're always going to be able to play this probably on turn 2 for your blue-green ramp deck. I think that this card is excellent. It does what Kroxa doesn't, which is give you velocity and ramp you. Obviously, with Kroxa, you're leaning into the discard thing, and you're really counting on those synergies. And you know that it's coming, so you can prepare for it, and your opponents don't know it's coming, so you can punish them for that. But with Uro, what you see is what you get, and what you get is some of the strongest stuff that you can do in Commander, and that's ramp and draw cards.
Yeah, it really rewards just playing a bunch of lands in your deck.
Yeah,
it really does.
Absolutely.
It's like in EDH, normally you want to run like 36, 37, maybe even up to 40 lands. This card incentivizes running even more, because the more you can play it, the more that you can get more land onto the battlefield, the more cards you're going to draw, the more life you're going to gain, and the more longevity you're going to have in the game.
ETBs, aura attacks, it's just, God, this card is just so good.
Yeah, I think that we can comfortably rank it at an S. I'm looking for ways to pick it apart and say, well, it's not good here, but I'm not going to say, well, if it had trample, it'd be better. It's already a great card.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when you're going to get that trigger on the attack, regardless of if it's trampling.
Hey, we got an S. We got an S
in this set. This was a fairly humble set as far as power level goes overall. Let's wrap it up with Athreos Shroud Veiled. You got Orzhov +4 for an indestructible 4/7. And as long as your devotion is to white and black is less than 7, it's not a creature. At the beginning of your end step, put a coin counter on another target creature. Can be your opponent's creatures or your creatures. Whenever a creature with a coin counter on it dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. Dies or is put into exile. That's pretty excellent. It costs 6. It's a slow commander. You don't want this creature dying more than once, which is great because it's indestructible, and it's an indestructible enchantment as long as you don't turn it on with the devotion to black and white. The coin counter, I hate that it doesn't ETB that. or like with the Titans, when it enters the battlefield or at the end of your turn kind of thing. You do have to play it, wait until the end of your turn, put a coin counter on either one of your creatures
whatever the biggest, most impressive thing is on the field.
Yeah, exactly. One of your opponent's huge things, your huge thing that you don't want to die, or your thing with some death triggers or some ETB triggers that you want to die and come back is another way to play this. But if I'm building this, I want to look at some kind of board wipe tribal style deck where I have big splashy ETBs or death trigger creatures. I put a coin counter on them. I wipe the board. It comes back, and I'm the only one with creatures, and I've still got my indestructible enchantment creature. But
sure.
It casts for 6. You don't have green in this. You got to play mana rocks to ramp. It casts for 6. You don't get to put the coin counter on until at your end step. So, I mean, you're not going to cast most of the board wipes in the format at instant speed. And so it seems so slow. And the artwork kind of evokes that too. It's like, I'm a Theros.
Yeah, just like vast and out in the distance, just kind of lumbering along. Despite all of that, and I do want to rank this card at an A, but because of how slow the casting cost is, and because of just generally how humble it is, and I'm not saying that if you resolve it, it's not going to run away with the game, because I absolutely believe it is. Because any removal that you have is just going to, and I will take this giant thing that you have, and I will take this giant thing that you have, and I will blow up the board, and I will get all of these things.
Exactly, you can keep
all of that is really good.
But just run your Wrath of God, run run every Kaya's Wrath,
planar cleansing, everything that you want.
Chroma's Vengeance, all of this. Just run all the board wipes, all the removal. Make it so that you're keeping the coolest thing on the battlefield over to you. Would it fall at A for you, or does it fall more B plus for you?
I would put it at a solid B, and maybe even possibly a C.
So how about B and a half? We'll make our nice little stairway to
C plus.
We'll call C plus. We'll call this our stairway to where the Theros gods hang out, and that is where our Theros Beyond Death tier list falls out right there. Look at the shape of that one. That one ended up weird. That's how the tier list falls out with Theros Beyond Death. We like these videos because the conversation continues below in the comments. Let us know which commanders we ranked poorly and which we were correct about. We love hearing that we were right.
Yes, if there's a tier list in the future that you want us to do, if you're like, man, I don't want to watch just some random commanders, show me some random cards. Tell me the top 10 best sharks that ever existed. Leave it in the comments below. If it's interesting, if it's fun, if it's a meme, we might turn it into a tier list.
We appreciate you watching all the YouTube stuff. Hit like, hit subscribe, comment. You know all of that stuff to do. We got a Patreon if you want to support us further. Links in the description. And we stream over on Twitch. Go check us out over there if you like watching Twitch. I'm tapped out.
And until next time, I will see you on the Flippity.